Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, your favorite podcast, even if you don't know it is. Harvest Church's original podcast. My name is Mike Reiner. I'm the lead pastor at Harvest, and right next to me is Will Land, Top Shelf Will, the executive pastor at Harvest. And on the board, like always, is our favorite, Sunshine.
Who everybody still wants to know who they are. I get asked all the time, like, I can't tell you.
I can't tell you.
Is it this person? I said I can neither confirm nor deny.
We won't tell you who any of our producers have been, but we will say that they all contributed something. And Cruiser contributed quite a bit at a foundational level. But we're just stuck on Sunshine. We think she's our favorite now. And so you can't know who she is because we have to protect her. We don't want her to be in danger. Because we say controversial things here, and it's a strange world we live in. So anyway, we are jumping in, and we're going to start with the Bible, and then after that I got a video that we're going to talk about. I think you're going to like it, Will. You haven't seen it. He hasn't seen it. I haven't warned him at all, but I think he's going to like it. But I'm very excited about talking about the scripture with you because it's
We're in Luke 20, verse 9, right?
19.
9 to 19.
19 to 26. 19 to 26. We did the vineyard already.
Oh, yeah.
So, but this one has a line in it that has changed the world. And the world still talks about it, and Christians still talk about it, and no one's sure what it means. It's like Jesus can drop a sentence and change the world. I mean, who else could drop one sentence? And it changes governments. People talk about it. People write books on it. I mean, Jesus is dropping it like it's hot, baby. I mean, people think, oh, he's not God. He's just a great teacher. He is not just a great teacher, man. When you can drop a sentence and the whole world changes. So anyway, let's get started. We're in verse 19 of chapter 20. So the scribes and the chief priests tried to lay hands on him that very hour. And they feared the people, and they understood that he spoke this parable against them. That was the parable we ended with last time about the vineyard. And so this is the last week of his life before he resurrects. And he's at the temple, and there's a lot of people, and the chief priests think now's the time to kill him, and the people think now's the time to crown him king. So it's really the coolest Passover ever if you're there.
Climactic.
So, it's that's the word.
Everybody there knows it. It's climactic. Something has to be done with this guy.
It's gonna pop, and it does. It does. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be righteous. I love that. They stopped going up themselves and arguing with him, right? They this is loud. This is like psh, psh, psh. This is loud clothing. If I get cold, I have something else. They stopped going up there. That was it. The last time they went up.
They being the Pharisees and the scribes, the leaders,
yes,
the pastors.
That was what do they say? It's fresh on all our minds because it was just in a sermon. Who was the baptism of John? No. They want to know by whose authority do you do this? And after he slammed them, then they're like, we're going to stop asking him questions in public. It's making us look really stupid. So then they think we'll get spies. I wonder if they look like spy-like, or if people, like they had a fake nose and a baseball cap. They're like, that's a scribe. We know you. But they sent in some people. They sent spies. Well, I'm assuming they're scribes. They're not scribes. They're just dudes, I guess, who pretended to be righteous. And by this, they're not pretending to be righteous like we'd think saved. They're pretending to be really holy people who know their Bibles and are devout, in order that they might catch him in some statement, so that they could deliver him to the rule and the authority of the governor. So verse 20, easy to pass that by, but don't. They want to deliver him to who?
Caesar. Well,
yeah,
Caesar's men.
Yeah.
So there were rules in Rome at the time that how Rome worked. I think we've covered this before, and you can correct me because I'm sure going to get parts of this wrong.
Repetition is good because to learn is to remember.
So Rome had conquered a lot of the known world at this point. So they're collecting many nations and cultures and religions under them.
Yeah.
And generally how Rome worked was they didn't try to stamp out your religion and
unless
culture.
they wanted to.
They
were not like the Babylonians who showed respect for your religion. They're like, we won't stand by out unless we want to.
Yeah, but as long as you made Caesar was Lord.
Yes.
If you declared Caesar Lord, they didn't really care what you did under that.
Yes, and the Jews wouldn't do that.
And the Jews wouldn't do that. So essentially, we're about to see if they can get him to say something unlawful about Caesar's domain, then that would get him in trouble with the Romans.
Yeah, so just think how rotten they're being. They want to turn over one of their own to the bad guys.
Well, and because they're afraid of their own people, right? We've already saw that. They would be more, it says it right above, but in the passage we covered a couple weeks ago about John the Baptist, the Jews, they feel limited. The Jewish high priests and Pharisees, the Jewish authorities, are scared of their own people. Like, they need a really good reason for them to do anything about Jesus directly because they know that there's plenty of Jesus supporters.
Yeah.
And so if we can make trouble with the Romans, then the Romans can come in and do something about Jesus, and they won't care that the Jews are in support of him.
That's well said. So they know that if they kill him, which they're happy to do, they're happy to stone him to death, that the people are going to riot. The idea that violence and politics go together is kind of not new. It's only new for Americans because we've been so doggone Christianized, but it's pretty much the way people have always been, and they're afraid that they're outnumbered by the people. So they're going to turn them over to Caesar, as you first said, which is a good insight on this text. In its betrayal, Jews to turn someone over to the non-Jews when they consider them dogs, it's like saying Jesus is himself just a scrap of rotten food that you would throw to a dog. Verse 21. And they questioned him, saying, this was their great question. Teacher, we know that you speak and teach correctly, and you're not partial to any, but teach the way of God in truth. That would be...
kissing butt?
I was going to say brown nosing, but it's the same thing. They were sucking up to him big time. That's flattery. Do you think that's going to work with Jesus? We know you're the best and you're the smartest. So answer this. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, what's the trick here? Because there's a trick. Can you guess?
Well, on one hand, the trick is easy. If they say it's not lawful, then that's subverting Caesar's authority and gets you in trouble with Caesar.
Yeah.
But if you say it is lawful, then you're saying Rome has a rightful claim over God's nation, the Jews, to extract taxes, which would be kind of anti-Jewish. So
Yeah.
kind of wrong. It's a trap.
Right. So lawful for them is lawful in their scripture. And I don't know the ins and outs of exactly what that would be in the Bible, but I do know that at the time, the popular opinion was they were an oppressed people, and you're not taking taxes from me, we're not giving them to you. So they took them. They regularly took them. They hired other Jews as tax collectors, and they sent guys with swords. If you didn't give it to them, you had to pay, but it was forced. So that was a complaint against Rome. You shouldn't be in our country. You're stealing from us.
Because God gave us, the Jews, sovereignty. We're supposed to be this special nation.
That's
right. And
so they're not saying... Let's say it another way. The people asking the questions are paying taxes. The issue isn't paying taxes. The issue is, are you going to take a stand saying it's okay to pay taxes? Yeah. And you're going to say no, because we all say no, it's not okay to pay taxes. But we do it anyway. and you're going to say no, and we're going to tell the Romans, and they're going to arrest you.
So I like making analogies because it's easy for us to understand. It's just like parables, It's like, okay, let's imagine China invades and takes over America.
Yeah.
But all of us Americans who are under Chinese oppression now, like think Red Dawn, the 1980s movie, right? China starts levying attacks, or Russia starts levying attacks against the oppressed people of America, and on the inside, we're all saying, no, we still believe in the Declaration of Independence. We only believe in governance by the people, for the people, and we're just an occupied state in essentially a state of war, and China is our big oppressors. And so then you're asking the guy, is it righteous for China to be levying taxes on us after they've conquered us and we don't really recognize their authority? And it's like, think of it in that way. Like, you wouldn't be happy as an occupied American citizen underneath Russia or Chinese invading forces.
Right. And so go back 250 years ago.
The American War for Independence.
Yes. Now, and so that's one element. But I think there's another element, and I say I think, I mean, I can't guarantee it, but it feels, the tense gives the sense that there's another element, and that is that the populism movement needed certain slogans. For example, this week that I'm talking to you, it'll be a few weeks ago when you see this, the president was on Laura Ingram's show, and he said, we need H-1B visas, right, which are foreign worker visas. And on X, which is not real life, the MAGA people are going nuts. They're just going absolutely losing screws over it. How dare, he forgot it's America first. And he says, we need more skilled workers. She says, don't we have skilled workers? He goes, no, we don't have enough skilled workers. You can't take someone off the unemployment line and put them in these. And all these people are losing their minds. The MAGA movement is dead because he said we need to bring in people from India to do jobs. He's sold us all out. Now, I'm going to say this. The MAGA people are being stupid. He's not betraying anything. He's probably telling us something that's true because he's the president and he sees the data. In other words, if you do have a job that takes a lot of high-skilled people, you might say, well, they just want to pay lower prices. That might be true. But another thing could also be true, that once you've hired all the qualified Americans you can find, you may still have openings for jobs. I don't want to insult American pride, but right? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Now, whether you agree with me or not, that's not my point. My point is that because he said it, he said the wrong thing, and the people are turning on him, his own people. That, I think, is part of what they want, too. So it's two things going on. One, the question, is it lawful? But the other question is, well, he has to say no, because the people will not put up with him saying yes. That's not the right slogan.
Yeah.
So that's what they're thinking. So it's a double. You can't win either way. If you say it's not okay, then the Romans get you. If you say it is okay, then the people don't like you. So he detected their trickery. How long do you think it took him? Jesus detected their trickery. He's Detective Jesus. He's like Sherlock Holmes. He's like, I got you people, you yo-yos. And so he right away says, show me a denarius. Denarius is a pretty hefty coin. It's a full day's wage. So what would that be like? $100 bill?
Yeah.
For an average working man?
$100.
For and I mean an unskilled laborer, working man, entry-level job. Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have? And they said Caesar's. And he said to them, well, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. Did he answer the question, Will? What do you think?
Yes.
Wasn't it a yes or no?
It seems to be a yes. But it's a nice way of saying yes.
It's kind of, people are like tricked. It's like, what was it at Bilbo's birthday party? He said, I like half of you half as much as whatever. They're like,
I like half as you half as much as I should. And like,
I forget. Do you remember how he said that?
Oh, I'll have to look it up.
You should look it up if you do. But it's like he said something. They're all going, yeah, what he said. What did he say? Did he say we have to pay taxes? I don't know what he said. He said to render to, if Caesar's face is on it, then give it to Caesar. But then he adds a second half. But if God's face is on it, or if God, give the things to God. Did you find it?
It's thinking.
Oh, it's thinking. And it says, and they were unable to catch him in a saying in the presence of the people, and being amazed at his answer, they became silent. So but in verse 26, the spies themselves, it seems to be, it's either the amazement is of the people, the way the New American Standard translators put it, the amazement is of the questioners, I think. the way they put it. But either way, they're like, wow, that was a pretty good answer. Here we are as spies. We're supposed to trick him, but I don't think we can trick him. I think he's too smart for us. So they just shut up and went away. Now the Sadducees, who think they're pretty smart, are going to come after him next. But I want to stick with this one for a while, because to show me a denarius whose likeness is on it. And then he says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God's. I think there are a lot of interpretations of that.
I'm struggling to get away from any number of sermons I've heard on this, because if you've been a Christian for any number of time, I think I've heard this even long before I became a quote-unquote Christian, you've probably heard a sermon on it. And so probably most of my opinions on this are based on the fact that deep in my brain
what
are
are
sermons.
some of the things you've heard?
The one that comes to mind most readily is the image. So he looks at the denarius and said, whose image is on it? And they say, Caesar's. Okay, so give what has the image of Caesar to Caesar.
Right.
And so I've heard sermons on, well, who bears the image of God?
You do.
You do. Human beings do. So you give Caesar the gold coin, but you give your entire being to God.
So let me test that a minute.
So I've heard that sermon
I
before.
have too, and I got to tell you, there's a profundity to it that I can't argue with. We know that Paul says, I urge you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present yourself to God a living sacrifice. And we know Jesus says, if you're going to come after me, you have to take up your cross and follow me. So that even if that's not exactly what he's saying, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But you should give yourself to God. Going back to what you said at the beginning, they wanted to turn him over to Caesar. Notice, if Jesus is the image of God, right? He's the invisible representation of his nature. They actually want to take him and give him to Caesar. So they're going to screw it up anyway. But so there's that individual level, right? At the individual level, give yourself to God. But I don't think that's his main point. That's why I do agree. That's definitely there. But I don't think that's his main point. Well, maybe it is his main point. That's what makes this difficult. Because he answered the question by saying, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar. And did you find it, by the way?
The quote? Yeah.
Go ahead and read it.
This is from The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien, at the beginning, Bilbo's this is Fellowship of the Ring.
Bilbo's 111st birthday.
Yeah, 111th birthday.
Yes.
Being celebrated with Frodo's 35th birthday, I think.
And a bunch of, he invited the whole town.
And he said, I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. I like less than half of you
half as well as
half
you deserve.
as well as you deserve. Meaning, I don't like the vast majority of you.
But then he wasn't done. There's more to it.
Yeah.
What's the rest of it?
That's all they gave me. I'll say, what's the extended quote?
Yes, because it has two halves to it. Go ahead, read the whole thing again. It's hard to follow.
I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve.
This is why the English are smarter than us. They come up with things like that.
I don't know half of you half as well as I should.
Which is on him, that he doesn't know them well enough.
And I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve.
I like less than half of you half as well as
you deserve.
I should like you more.
I should like you more.
So they couldn't figure out if he insulted him or not. I can't either. So Jesus said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. So let's extend that then. If he's saying, this is a coin, has his face, give it to him. Should we give all our money to the government? Or just what they ask? Did he say it's always okay to pay your taxes?
No.
Why not? He said,
that's not what he said. I don't know.
He took a denarius and he said, and then here comes another question for the text. Did he just bifurcate, cut into two pieces, your allegiances between government and God? Is he giving you permission to participate in government, or not? What is he?
We didn't bifurcate, right? So that would be a logical mistake. Like, just because he makes two categories does not mean that the categories are mutually exclusive. By mutually exclusive, I mean, imagine a Venn diagram, but they don't even intersect. They're not touching each other. Just because he said, render to Caesar's that which are Caesar's, and that which are God's, and to God the things that are God's, does not mean that God's category doesn't completely contain Caesar's category. Like, they don't have to be separate. The logic doesn't require separation of the two.
So
that'd be a category error.
Could you have a government that was set up, and you could say this is God's government? So when you pay taxes, you're both giving. You're not even giving to Caesar. You're only giving to God.
I think that was phrased in a way like Bilbo's question. We see elsewhere in the New Testament that God institutes all authorities on the earth,
right?
Even the unrighteous ones.
Yes.
And so any government is ordained by God. Doesn't mean they're doing a good job or that they are righteous, right?
Right.
And so in some way, unless you're going explicitly against things God has told you elsewhere, in submitting to the government telling you to pay them taxes, you are submitting to God. Like,
okay, so
you get what I'm saying?
I'm going to stop you right there. That argument is the seminal New Testament. Seminal means what?
Most important.
Actually, I got you. I got him. Seminal is the Genesis. The word seed is in it.
The origination, where it comes from.
And so you can have seminal text from which, and is probably Romans chapter 13, where verse 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, where it says, every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist are established by God. So God established the Roman authority. So in that case, Jesus could have said, well, since God set up Rome, of course you should pay taxes. But he didn't say that.
No, he didn't.
But it would have been true.
Yes.
Okay. And then Paul says, therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and and those who have opposed will receive condemnation on themselves. I'm going to guess that could be earthly or spiritual condemnation. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. That's a generalized rule that says human beings will generally tell you don't steal from one another, don't kill one another. This is not him saying that all rulers are not corrupt, taking bribes and those sorts of things. But generally the rules are be nice. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do you want do what is good, and you will have praise from the same? For the authority is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. It is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it's necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but for conscience' sake. For because of this you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Therefore render to all what is due, tax to whom tax, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. And then he jumps off into the abstract of loving one another, so I'm going to stop there. But his point there is, when it comes to the government, show them the respect that their position deserves. And therefore pay your taxes. That is an explanation that goes in a totally different direction than Jesus. He doesn't say any of that stuff. He says if it's Caesar's, give it to him. So I'm going to go back to my question. If you have a government that says our government, we are God's government. They say God put us here, God sent me here to rule. Therefore, for that reason, you should pay taxes.
Now you're describing the Jews. Because we just had a text.
I was trying to describe Rome in the year 383 when the only legal religion was Christianity throughout the whole large world empire.
Well,
They would say God made the emperor the emperor, and he must rule. And so now you got this confusion.
That carried forward, too, all the way into Divine Right of Kings.
Well, it carried right
in England
to the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And the Catholic Church then tried to find a way to enforce that over the king. So the kings had to bow to him. That's what led to, many centuries later, Henry VIII saying, we're not Catholics anymore because I'm tired of doing what this Pope says.
Because I want to be the head of the church.
That's right. It's what led to the Reformation. The Germans are saying, we don't want to listen to Rome anymore. They're always on the side of Spain or France, and screw them. So we're going to,
Well, before we get there, can we go back to where that hypothetical was actually true? Because we just did ask the pastors in the last podcast about 2 podcasts ago about Micah testing God, right?
I don't remember that.
It was about tithing and being blessed.
Oh, yeah.
So
tithing. Malachi. Was that Malachi or Micah?
It was Malachi.
Right?
It was Malachi. Yep.
Where the nation of Israel was instituted by God.
It was a theocratic institution.
And then its system of governance was instituted by God, including the priesthood and eventually the kings.
Although he didn't want the kings at first.
I know. And it was one of their laws to give to the Levitical priesthood.
Yeah.
And then in that text we went through, God says, you're stealing from me by not giving to the priesthood and not feeding my workers. And so I feel like that would be an example of paying taxes to a governing structure that's actually like 100%
gotcha.
Giving to God.
Gotcha. I think you're getting the
Trying
way
to answer your question.
The way, and you're doing well. I think the way you're going is looking at lines of authority,
right,
from God. And that was all a setup for me to say, is there always a splinter between human government and God because of this sentence? Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. This is a profound statement that piques people's curiosity to this day, including non-Christians. If you were to hear Jordan Peterson talk on this subject, I don't understand most of what he says, but he goes off on this. Is this a forever splinter away from human government?
I think that's a logical leap that the text doesn't require.
Okay, it might not require it, but does it give it? Because it says to me, the human, give Caesar something, give God something. They're two different things. Now, they may seem to come together, maybe in Israel, like your example, maybe in Rome, in my example, but they're not together. One is an earthly, finite king of some sort, and the other is the infinite king. And they're two separate gifts. Right here, you have your taxes, but I have to give something to God too. The separation of church and state is an idea that formed, I don't know when, because I haven't studied that, but much after this, much longer after this.
Yeah.
But this, I think, is a great argument in favor of stopping the church from running your town or your state, because you're putting the church in the place of Caesar. It's
I would agree.
It's not under God, it becomes God. And it didn't work out well for the Roman Empire. It didn't work out well for
anybody.
For the settlers, the Pilgrims came to America for religious freedom, but not for freedom of religion. They wanted freedom to do religion their way. And they set up a system in Boston, whatever, and their goal was to make a theocracy.
Yeah, religious society, yeah.
And they couldn't do it. They started running into practical problems. First, how do we know you're really saved if we make you the mayor? And they used to have these tests. You had to prove through your testimony some dramatic crisis, and they you had to prove it. And so then you get someone who proved to be the right person, and then he'd misbehave. Or you wouldn't have enough people you've already authorized as regenerate. And they had this problem. They said, well, we're going to have to make some sort of subcategory so we can allow... This really happened. It's history that's not often taught, but you can look it up. It's in there. So they said, well, we don't think you're unregenerate, but you're friendly enough, or you're regenerate, so we'll make you... And it just didn't work, right? It didn't work. And I think it's because this crossover, render to Caesar things that are Caesar's, I think it goes farther than paying taxes. I think it just echoes louder to me throughout history. Caesar is your government, and he governs something. But then there's God, and he governs all things. And so you can give him his chits, right? You can give him his little bits of metal with his names on it. But I want more. God expects more from you because God is your governor. I think there's a lot more to it. I think if you're going to be a pacifist, which I'm not in favor of, even they would lean on this text. I'm under God's governance first, not yours. And it's a higher calling. It's a higher governance.
Yeah, you're touching on one thing that I'm definitely getting out of this text. It's like, it's not explicitly in there, but it just seems to be loudly implied that Jesus is minimizing the value of the denarius.
Of Caesar.
Of Caesar. Like, it's not said in there, but it just comes across very strong that it's like, yeah, well, give whatever Caesar's got his face on, you can give to him.
Right.
But give what's God's to God's. And then you're left with the big question of like, well, what all is God's?
And then we come back.
And everything's God's.
And that came back to your original point, is that we are in the image of God, which I think he doesn't say that either explicitly, but he sure seems to hit the bullseye to think that. I think that makes...
He's definitely minimizing Caesar's claim, I feel like.
Yeah, you've got money and you got humans. Let's take it, which is your original... When I asked you what are some interpretations you heard, you said that I'm in the image of God, so I give myself to God. Okay, so not only is Caesar less than God, but coins are less than people. And you give Caesar the junk, right? You give him the junk, and you give God the good stuff. Okay, fine. So then, how much can you expect from human government? I mean, if it's just a repository for the necessary trinkets of life, your expectation of human government needs to be in line with its littleness. Does that make sense? Okay, Caesar needs a few dollars to pay his soldiers, to build his palace, to build Roman roads. Give him his trinkets. But he's not dealing with the important things. I put him there to keep the peace, so I can do the important things. It's like God is saying. It's not all that is in that text, but it seems to be like a doorway. It just opens up onto a whole new way of thinking. To the Jews who don't give to foreign governments, yeah, you can give to them. What the heck? They're nobodies. They're people printing their face on stuff. Yeah, you can have it. But what does God want of you? I think there's still more. Still more. It just keeps coming. The next text, the Sadducees take their shot at him. Now, therefore, came some of the Sadducees who say, there is no resurrection. The Sadducees, as you may not have heard, but many Christians have heard, how do you know the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees? The Pharisees were the sect that was most numerous. Those were your pastor at your local synagogue, your country pastor, as well as the rich and powerful high priests and stuff. And they believed the Bible. They were fundamentalists, right? Every word matters. The Sadducees, there weren't near as many of them, and those were your liberal seminary teachers from like the Lutheran seminary. They didn't believe the Bible, and since they didn't believe in a resurrection, they're sad, you see. That's the old Christian way of remembering it in America. They say they're sad, you see, because they don't believe in the resurrection. There's not as many of them, but they're based in Jerusalem, and they love the rich and the powerful, and they see themselves as having the place as the clergy representatives. Kind of, if you ever see a Time magazine at Easter, there's always Jesus on the front. If you read those articles, they're always written by a Sadducee. They're never written by the Pharisees. They don't ask John MacArthur, write an article on Jesus. They don't want that. They get the professor type. So the Sadducees, though, they are united with the Pharisees in that there has to be an equal number of them in the ruling body of the Jews called the Sanhedrin. Equal number as the Pharisees. So it's like the Republicans and the Democrats.
I didn't know that.
And there had to be an equal number. So they were...
I knew they were included. I didn't know that there was a mandated mix.
They had more power than they had representation. And
they were overrepresented.
Yeah, but they had money, and the rich are always overrepresented. And that's how that works.
As they should be.
So they said, that's right. That's right.
Let's see who gets
So
mad
the
at
Pharisees and the scribes, they could not stump Jesus. So the Sadducees in their pomp and arrogance thought, we'll get him. So I love this question. So they questioned him saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, you can almost hear the liberals saying it to you today. In the Bible, it says that if a man lies with a man, that it's an abomination. Isn't that right? You say, yes, it's in the Bible. Doesn't that same book somewhere say that if you have two different kinds of thread in your cloth, that's an abomination to the Lord?
You should be stoned.
Yeah, and I don't even remember if it says stone, but it's... And you say yes, and they say, "Aha, got ya!" And they don't understand what they're saying. This is that kind of question. So they don't believe the Bible to be accurate like the Pharisees do, and literal. So they're going to ask him a question. We'll get him. This one always gets them. Ask him this. Moses wrote, if a man's brother dies, having a wife, and he is childless, and he says his brother should marry his wife and raise up his brother's children. And raise up children for his brother. I'm sorry. So, and by the way, this was the ancient first law of the Jews to keep the names alive, keep the, so.
Family lineage.
I don't know why, but it was God's rule just for the Jews. And in fact, it was, Jesus was born from a mishap on this. His grandfather was born from this because Judah's son died, and then so his brother married, his daughter-in-law married the second son, and the second son, I'm not going to have babies with her, so God killed him. So he was supposed to give him to a third son, and he said, I'm not going to do it. He knew the law, but he wasn't going to do it because he thought they're dropping like flies. And then he ended up being the dad, but that's another story. But so it's a very serious law. Brother, you got to marry your brother's wife if he dies. So, if you're a Jew and you're the younger brother, always make sure that your older brother marries a wife you're somewhat attracted to. If she's nasty and yucky and she doesn't like you, she's like, no, you don't want her. You don't want her. You might even pick out a woman you like and give them to your brother. Just in case things go south.
Goodness gracious!
I know. Now there were 7 brothers. Now, this is their story.
This seems like such a hypothetical.
It is a hypothetical.
Now, let's imagine.
That's exactly.
There's 7 brothers, and they all die.
And the first one took a wife and died childless. And then the second, and then the third married her. In the same way, all 7 died, leaving no children. Finally, the woman died also, to which we all say, it's about time. The woman is the black widow, the very kiss of death. Everyone she marries dies. I'd start to suspect she's killing them.
I mean, who would want to be brother number 6?
No. This is ID network sort of stuff. But all 7 died, leaving no children. In the resurrection, therefore, which ones will she be? For all 7 had married her. So their question that they're going to stump them was, by God's law, she has 7 husbands. And we can't be having 7 husbands. Well, there's no such thing as a woman having 7 husbands. And Jesus said, the sons of this age are to marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Very interesting thing.
Yeah, it's bothered a lot of people for a long time, that phrase.
Has it?
I think so. I have anecdotes of particularly wives being like, I don't like the idea of not being married to my husband in heaven. And
yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, and then there's Meatloaf. I've been waiting till the end of time to hurry up and arrive, because if I have to spend another minute with you. You know that song? Paradise by the Dashboard Lights?
I do.
It's a good song.
We've listened to it together before.
Oh, that's right. So the sons of this age marry and are... So Jesus has 2 ages. Now there may be more ages, but he's giving us 2. There's this age and that age, right? And I'm going to think they are in consecutive order.
Yeah, well, I think he's clearly referring to verse 33, in the resurrection. In that age. What age? The age of the resurrection.
Right. That's right. And so he's saying those considered worthy, for all you know, they're all free because she's in hell for killing them. We don't know. But but for those considered worthy to attain to that age and the resurrection from the dead, it's interesting that, go back to verse 27, the Sadducees say there is no resurrection. Jesus, before answering the question, takes his finger and sticks it in their eye. He just says right out, for those who attain to the resurrection from the dead. He's like, don't even, it's a non-starter that you're here. And then he gives them their answer. They neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot even die anymore. Which is a great idea. Can't die anymore. Because they're like angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. Man, don't pass over that. There's so much good stuff in there. You can't die, therefore you can't marry.
That's
know. Interesting.
I was reading this the other day. And
what?
I don't know. So he's connecting
biological life to marriage.
Yeah, he's connecting the fact that you can die somehow to being the need for marriage. Well, I guess so that's how we be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, procreation. Now the modern man says, I get married if I want to satisfy and I have kids if I want to. Jesus seems a little more bound to the biology. If you can't die, you don't need to get married.
Because we don't need to be producing more humans.
Which leads to the question every man wonders, but what about sex? And
then you get the awkward, well, don't worry, you'll be the bride of Christ.
I hate that.
I know.
No, we're not doing that.
It's the worst.
I don't even go there because that can't be taken that way. I think the better answer, and it is better.
It was a joke, not an answer.
I gotcha. Is there is no satisfaction that earth can give, that this age can give you, that will make any sense in the next age as being something to attain, because all of them will be less than. So you don't need a corresponding sexual excitement at all. You just won't need it. You're going to be, whatever love you get out of beauty and the wonder, you'll have that in spades and self-control.
C.S. Lewis helped me with this. So we all know last summer was the summer of C.S. Lewis for me.
Everyone should have at least one summer like that.
So in his space trilogy, book 2 is called Paralandra. And the main character goes to an unfallen world. It's actually Venus, I think.
Where Adam and Eve have lost each other.
And he interacts with a different, let's call it an archetype of Adam and Eve. Their names aren't Adam or Eve.
The word archetype or archetype means, an arch means king. Yeah. So if you say an archetype, and I think psychologists came up with this. I don't know who came up with. Was it philosophers?
Jacques Derrida? No, not Derrida. Yes, somebody who
someone who I don't read.
Someone who Jordan Peterson's a big fan of.
Yeah, who I've never read. But an archetype means, like, if you think of a grandma, an archetypical grandma would be, she's a little chubby but not too chubby. She's friendly. She knows how to cook, and she's wise, and she keeps her hair in a bun. It's just what you think of when you think of a grandma.
Yeah.
So
it's like a.
Let me throw it back to you. I just wanted to define the word archetype.
Yeah, it's like a role.
So
like a superhero.
Right. So you're saying that in that book you had an archetype of Adam and Eve.
Yes. So they were unfallen people.
But they did not eat of the fruit.
Yes, and he's in on an unfallen world.
So the animals aren't afraid of him.
Correct.
And he can talk to them.
And so you get this unfallen world. There's yet to be any sin in it. The two humans, they're not humans, but they kind of like humans, male and female, it's like they're in the Garden of Eden. Like this whole planet is still in the unfallen state. And he's naked on the world, and she's unclothed, and she's not human, but he does a very good job in that book of describing what it's like. He's obviously in his imagination of being in an unfallen state, and the beauty of the sunrise, and the conversation he's having with this unfallen being, and the animals that are there, and how he starts to see all of the scrambling, because he's from Earth, so all he knows is the fallen state of Earth, and he starts to see with more clarity his perspective on hunger and lust and all of these things that he chases after back on Earth that never satisfy, that come from lack, and that doesn't exist there, and it changes his whole perspective. And it's just a great it's a great imagination.
If you love that kind of thing, you'll love C.S. Lewis. My wife's always like, why didn't he just say that? But I love that kind of thinking. So if you think of the beauty of a flower, if you ever walk on a color, maybe a dark purple one, and you go, well, that really is, I got to stop, and that really is beautiful. It still leaves you like it's not sufficient. There's something greater, and that it's an echo of a greater thing. And Lewis sat hard on that, the idea that all we're seeing is the shadows of perfect beauty. And marriage itself then is a temporary shadow of the friendship we all will have with God. And it's not sexual. That is a biological necessity. Yeah. It is not a reality. So he's saying you're not going to die. You're going to be like angels. This has caused some people to wrongly think we're all going to have wings. If I do have wings, it'll be cool. I'm not against wings. Or we don't even know what angels are like, except for they all look like men, big, strong men and they don't have wings.
And they glow a little bit, it seems like.
They glow. They're frightening and impressive. But he's not saying that. He's saying as the angels are, I was going to say sexless, but there's masculine and feminine, and there's no need to think those things go away.
They're not genderless.
But they have no necessity for marriage or reproduction.
Right.
And so are,
because they don't die.
So and it says are the sons of God, which can be confusing, right? By sons, what does he mean? I think here he does not mean son. God is only one son. But the word is used. They are the offspring of God. They are, as it were, his children in that sense. And so that's us. We are sons of God through Christ. So being sons of the resurrection. So you get to be a child of God, but you don't get to be God like Jesus is. And that's not saying that. I'm clarifying that, lest you turn into a Mormon thinking you get to turn into God, which you can't. So go ahead.
I really like verse 37 because Jesus...
I haven't got to that yet.
Well, I'm just saying this is where it all turns. It's just like in the last passage where he...
This was all the drum roll.
Senses their trickery. He's like, you ain't even really asking me about marriage, though. You're trying to catch me in a rhetorical where it's impossible.
He does answer the question bluntly without explaining their silly rhetoric. He says, there is no marriage in heaven, you dummy heads, because it's the resurrection from the dead. But then he says, but that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the burning bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. How does that show the resurrection? And in this case, how does that show life after death?
I guess he's arguing because it's in present tense.
Right. He is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob.
He wasn't. It's not. He was the God of Abraham.
Yeah, he's not. We're not done with them. They're not historical figures. They are present realities. He is the God of them. And now he is not the God of the dead, but of the living. God is the God of roadkill. And if Abraham's just roadkill, he's not God. And all live to him. And some of the scribes answered and said, "Teacher, you have spoken well." For they did not have the courage to question him any longer about anything. So then Jesus turns around and asks them a question, right? He's like, well, let me ask a question. Well, I'm going to stop right there. But it's just, so you got the spies come up to ask a question. It doesn't work out. So the Sadducees try their hand. And the scribes who are listening to the Sadducees, scribes are probably Pharisaical. They're like, that's a pretty good answer. They might have enjoyed seeing their enemies, the Sadducees, getting a little egg on their face, too. So, because they didn't like each other, Sadducees and Pharisees. Anyway, some great Bible texts, isn't it?
Yeah, and those are familiar passages. It's you said this a couple podcasts ago. It is crazy when you get back to the gospel, like how much of your most familiar Jesus stuff is all in this week.
Last week of his life. In fact, John, most of it, half of 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, 4.5 chapters are all one night.
Yeah, they're all up. That's the upper room, right?
Yeah, one night, and the rest. So it's, well, then the next chapter is the arrest. So 18. Yeah, it's all one night. So, anyway, let's
moving on.
Yeah, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
I got a video for you.
Okay.
Another hero, I think, someone who's, and I don't know of her faith, but she's standing up for truth in a world of not truth. And I'm moving us to the subject of male and female, but bigger than the fights of male and female. In other words, I'm not talking transgenderism. I'm not talking about gay versus straight, but bigger, cultural, feminine impact in culture, masculine impact in culture. And so we're going to have a start-stop video like we've done before. And by the way, if some of you like that, let us know. If some of you hate that, let us know. We don't have to do it that way. It's just an easy way to interact. I like doing it because it gives you guys some variety, just not just hearing us. But we can also interact with a person who's not a guest, and whether friend or foe. This one I'd call friend. I'm not saying she's Christian. I don't know, so it's not gospel friend, but it's at least a worldview friend. So
co-belligerent.
A co-belligerent. Belligerent meaning
fighter.
Fight with us.
Good example of co-belligerence is later half of World War II. The good guys were co-belligerents with Russia. We were fighting the same enemy.
And Stalin is a bad person.
It doesn't mean we were, yeah,
but we were co-belligerents.
Yeah.
War makes strange bedfellows, as they say.
Yeah.
We're not really bedfellows, though.
That's a weird thing.
That really is weird. Anyway, you ready, Sunshine?
Mm-hmm.
Let's hit it.
The libertarian economist
Helen Andrews
wrote a blog post describing all of the revolutions he's seen in the course of his lifetime.
Another person smarter than us.
Starting with the moon landing when he was a little boy and going up chronologically to today's advent of AI. And there were only 7 revolutions on this list because this was only the greatest and most earth-shaking ones.
Okay, could you stop her for a second? I want to warn the people of something. You may hear this and think, uh-oh, this looks boring. Don't write off these quiet people who look like they got nothing to say.
Yeah, she's wearing like pleated khakis with her shirt tucked in.
Talking like a 5th grade algebra teacher that you don't want to listen to. Give old Helen Andrews a moment. She's a fireball.
All right.
Hit it.
In the fall of communism and the invention of the internet was something called the Great Feminization. That is not a phrase that a lot of Americans know, but future historians may well rank it as having greater importance than almost any other revolution on that list. The Great Feminization is very easy to define. It refers to the increasing representation of women in all of the institutions of our society. But as simple as it is to define, it's very difficult for those of us on the other side of that revolution to fully grasp its significance.
Could we stop
The
a minute?
first thing,
So I remember a day when there were mailmen, firemen, chairman of the board. When you went on an airplane, you had a stewardess. When you went to the restaurant, you had a waitress. And you say, aren't those normal? No, they're not normal. Now you're supposed to call your waitress do you know what you call them? Server.
Server, yeah.
Yeah, they're servers. Now we still call them waitresses. They try to get rid of it. Your stewardess is now
Flight
a
attendant.
flight attendant. They're attending the flight. The chairman of the board, they still use chairman, but often they'll use chairperson. The mailman is a mail carrier. The fireman is a firefighter. Because we had to get rid of the word man. But when I was a kid, all those people were men, except the stewardess, who was always a woman, and the waitress, who was always a woman. There were waiters, but they were rare, and you had to go, I guess, to an expensive place to see them. And so you had certain jobs men did and women did. Nurses were always women. Doctors were mostly men. Now, what she's saying, the feminization, everybody's a woman. In it, not everybody's a woman. We're all women. Every job is open to the women now, including the job of man. If you want to be a woman or man, you can be one. There's nothing that will close off to the woman. And part of that is fine, by the way. The idea that if a woman can do a job, she should be allowed to do a job is there's nothing unbiblical about that. I'm all for that. If all other things being equal, no problem. But women are not men. So that's the issue she's getting at. The feminization is there's a belief that women are the same as men. So what's the difference? And she's going to push back and say there might be some negatives here. I just noticed, by the way, Mamdani, the communist Ugandan Islamic mayor. Well, how the heck did we get one of those?
This is New York City.
Ugandan born. He just put his transition team and his chief of staff, every one of them's a woman. Now, that's not an accident. Unless he just knows zero competent men. Anyway.
Well, he might that too, but
her subject is what effect is that going to have on us? And I think you guys will enjoy it. If not, we will. Go ahead.
that most people fail to understand about it is how unprecedented it is in human history. There have been many societies that have been feminist to one degree or another, in which women have been queens and owned businesses and held positions of authority that commanded the respect of men. But there has never been a society in which women hold as much political power as they do today. Think of all of the parliaments that have ever existed, every legislature in every country in every century. None of them has been, as ours is, 1/3 female. The idea of a female chief of police would have seemed very strange even to many early feminists, and yet today the police department is led by a woman in the largest city in America and in the city in which we are now standing. Law schools today are majority female. Law firm associates are majority female. Medical schools are majority female. Women earn a majority of BAs and PhDs. College faculty are majority female. Women are 46% of the managers in the United States.
Any of this shocking
and the
you?
white-collar workforce overall, workers with college degrees, a majority of them are women.
Can you stop for a minute?
No, I was familiar with all of that so
Even
far.
I am shocked to hear that. When she
I'm
said
dismayed, but not
the majority
shocked.
of lawyers are women, majority of women, people in law school. I mean, I know it's true in colleges. The majority of people at college are women. there is a balance issue, isn't there? Isn't it weird? Something is either your men are failing, or someone's killed half your men, or your women aren't doing anything else but whatever men. I mean, men can't have babies and nurture them. I guess if a woman drops a baby off with a man, boom, out it comes. The man takes it. I guess he can run with it like a football. But for the most part, men only have the option of doing the things she's talking about, where women have two options. They can do those things, or they can have babies. Anyway, I mean, it's obvious they're not having babies. Go ahead.
These are, in many cases, very recent developments, with the tipping point having occurred only in the last 5 to 10 years. And that is the other common misconception about the Great Feminization. People tend to think of feminism as something that occurred back in the 1970s. But it took several decades to go from token representation to approximate gender parity. The first woman on the Supreme Court was appointed in 1981, and in that year, women were 5% of the judges in America. Today, there are, of course, 4 women on the court, 1 justice away from a female majority, and women are 30% of the judges in America, 40% of the judges in the state of California, and 63% of the judges appointed by President Joe Biden. So from the first woman on the court to a likely female majority on the Supreme Court is probably going to be a span of about 50 years. And the exact same trajectory over the same timeline can be seen in many other professions. There was a pioneering generation in the 1970s where a woman was often the only female reporter in her newsroom or the only female professor in her department. And then increasing female representation through the 80s and 90s until a healthy female representation of about 20 to 30% by the turn of the century. And today, 25 years later, in many of these fields, they are now 40% female or 50-50 gender equal. And the pendulum may not be done swinging yet. As feminized as we are, we may get more feminized still. Look at the example of the profession of psychology. As recently as 25 years ago, psychology was a predominantly male profession, up to 70% male. Today, the youngest cohort of psychologists just joining the profession, 20% male. Men have evacuated the profession of psychology. And it's easy to understand why. It's because psychology has become feminized. As women increased their representation in the profession, they reoriented the field to be more friendly to their ideas and preferences, to be about caring and empathy and non-judgmentalism. So a man who wanted to become a psychologist because he liked judging other people would naturally choose a different profession.
Stop right there. That
was the first joke. I liked it.
And she dropped a bomb there. And I think that's going to be her main point. That was a bomb.
Men don't like feminine spaces?
No. That if you take a profession and you maximize the women, the profession changes its orientation.
Yeah.
So you have psychologists who are sitting there thinking, how does the brain work? Do you hate your mother? No? Okay. And the id, the ego, the superego. And what's going on here? What are the mechanics? How's all this work? It was dominated by men. Now she says it's 20% men. So her point is the men have evacuated. Why? Because they've changed orientation. To now, I just want to kind of affirm you and nurture you and comfort you and care for you. And whether that's good or bad, because it's been feminized, it's been changed. Now, look at law.
Well,
look at all the areas she said. There are still places that men are men, like on a football field. Although they're
for now.
Well, the quarterbacks are girls, but the other people are men, and because a woman can't do it, she can't do it. She's going to get pounded. Working on an oil rig in the ocean, she don't have the strength or stamina to do it. But the areas of life where men are men, that's one of the reasons I always love Little League football. It's a haven for men. Men should be coaches. Men and boys should play it, and they should get yelled at by people who are like drill sergeants. We don't want mama coaches, and we don't want women playing football. You play soccer. For a long time, the little girls are playing with you, and the mommies bring you oranges, and I don't think people think it matters, but it does matter. The game changes when there are no exclusive male or female things, and I'm not talking good or bad. Her point, she's dropped a bomb. She said the entire psychology field, psychiatry field, whatever it was, it's not now.
It's different.
It's not even the same thing. Not because of just progression and learning, but because you've changed the sex of the people who do it. Anyway, let her go on. You can comment anytime you want. This is a free-for-all.
The same thing has occurred in literary fiction. Some of you may have read in the last 12 months one of several articles in the New York Times about how men don't read novels anymore. And the explanation why, which is very obvious to me, even if it's not obvious to the New York Times, is that the publishing industry is overwhelmingly female, almost 80% female. So men do still like to read novels. They just don't like to read the kinds of novels that today's publishing industry produces. Some fields are more susceptible to feminization than others. There's very little you can do to feminize the field of math or engineering. But as women join a field in greater numbers, we should expect that any field that can be feminized will be, and the dynamic will play out exactly as it has in psychology. It may be that a 50-50 gender split is not a stable equilibrium. I have referred several times so far to feminization without defining what that means. I'll have a lot to say about it in just a moment, but if you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the things that wokeness means. Valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine. So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually...
Can you actually rewind it to her list a little bit? Did you write those down? It's very insightful. This is very Jordan Peterson.
I want to hear what you have to say. I just want to clarify for our listeners. She's not saying feminism. She's saying feminization.
Yes.
So feminism crosses over, but she's saying the feminizing means the increasing of women in the equilibrium or in the stats. But anyway, go ahead with what you're going to say.
Yeah. An equilibrium for you guys out there means like a place of stability. Like if you put a ball between two hills, it's going to come to rest at the valley in between, and it might bounce back and forth, but eventually it's going to come to rest. That would be the equilibrium point. What she's saying is 50-50 between men and women might not be the place that it naturally comes to stably rest. Like there's no reason that 50-50 is where...
Right. It may be halfway down the hill. We can follow that, and someone stopped it.
Right. So I like what she's saying. She's given some feminine and masculine characteristics of things, and that, again, is to not be confused between male and female. Men can have certain feminine characteristics, and you can do things that are feminine without being female.
But the fact that you can call them a feminine characteristic shows we understand the distinction.
Yeah, and that they maybe are more naturally
feminine,
emphasized in the female person. So what were some of the ones she said? She said empathy.
Well, you had her play it back.
Yeah,
play it again.
Can you play that list again and then pause it?
Yeah, you'll have to tell me if
just start
the
playing
right
it,
spot.
and we'll say go back or forward.
I have referred several times so far to feminization without defining what that means. I'll have a lot to say about it in just a moment. But if you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the things that wokeness means. Valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine.
Can you stop it? Yeah, so that's a great little partial list right there, right? It's not making a value judgment between either one.
No.
You often need balance between both. You don't want to live in a completely masculine society either. So she had empathy versus rationality, right? Well,
So
purely rational society is way too cold. If you've ever watched Star Trek, you think of Spock and the whatever those people are.
That's
like
Spock.
Nobody wants to live in the cold, no love world of Spock.
That's why he has Luhuro sitting over there,
Right.
sparkling away. And
But you don't want to completely jettison rationality for empathy either, or we've seen what that does in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And then safety and risk. So safety, a feminine trait. Men are much more risk-oriented. You see little boys are crazy risky. And I'm not saying that
careful.
young girls can't be,
Be
but
careful.
by and large. So you
Whenever
don't want
I'm around my grandkids, there's always a mother or a grandmother. When I'm saying, hey, come do this, they're saying, be careful. Jump off of that. Be careful. And I'm like, could you just go away? If something breaks, I'll tape it up. They're fine. It's definitely there. Go on.
So these are all somewhat neutral when in balance, when nice yin and yang, right? We need some thought to safety, but nothing risked, nothing gained, right? We need to risk. And then I like this cohesion and connectivity, I think she said, versus competition and hierarchy.
Yeah, without question.
I don't want to live in a completely competitive.
I have a good friend named Debbie Dennis, and she is a good friend. But she was trained in teaching, and we had a discussion about it, not an argument. We definitely disagreed, and I don't know what she'd say now. And if Debbie will probably never listen to this, but if she did, I said, look, and this was in the 90s, this idea of no competition, because she wanted games where no one kept score. But she was an elementary school teacher in New Jersey where they're so taught this stuff. And she's a good Christian woman. And I said, no, that's not good. You need to try to beat the other team. That's the whole goal. And I don't think either of us were deep in the conversation. Just both of us noticed that we were bumping into each other. And she didn't even like that. She didn't. Well, let's not talk about it. She wanted cohesion even in that discussion. She didn't want to compete. The guys are like, what do you mean we're not keeping score? Well, it doesn't matter who wins. We all need to have fun. Well, winning's a lot of fun, but you could lose and it would hurt someone. Yeah, I want to hurt them. That's what we like to do.
Right. In complete conformity and cohesion, you can't recognize that some people are better at some things than others, and other people are better at other things. And that is where hierarchy, competence, competition comes in. And so you can see in a healthy society in different domains, you need a balance of each of the feminine and masculine, or you're going to end up in, Mad Max Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Or you're going to end up in crazy woke land where we need safe spaces because I'm microaggressing you.
Well, and it's funny you say that because lawyers tend towards that, whether they're feminine or not, because they make money if they can prove you were unsafe.
More rules is better for them.
Because of that, all the rules about putting kids in your car, I want kids to be safe in cars, all right? I want them to be safe in cars. But for goodness sake, they've taught all the women in my world to be absolutely frightened to death if a child gets anywhere near the front seat, even if she's 10 years old. To be frightened to death if the kid's in a car seat, but it's a booster seat and it's not big enough. And to be frightened to death if the kid isn't strapped so much that there's no blood going past its shoulders. It's like, and what I'm getting at is a safety culture. Ultimately, and this is just an impression, looks like tyranny.
It is tyranny.
It looks like no freedom.
Because it's iRobot with Will Smith. Like if you gave an AI that was not wise but hyper intelligent and had all power, and you said, well, your number one rule is that you're not allowed to hurt humans. And it was like, oh, well, if no humans are allowed to get hurt, what's the easiest way to not have humans get hurt? Put them in a box and lock it. Because then they can't hurt each other. Then they won't get hurt.
Yeah,
right?
like the Matrix.
It's like
put them in some soup and leave them happy. So you got her saying it's wokeness. Now I find that interesting because wokeness and DEI and hurt feelings, they all go together. And microaggressions, you don't say that it might hurt someone's feelings.
Yeah, so that's conformity and cohesion. We
So-
can't
so
have
you got-
competition or hierarchy.
Right. You don't call your friend the R word. Why? Because it's a very hurtful word. Well, not to my friend, right? In other words, if I call you a retard, it's not going to bother you. Well, you're not even allowed to say that word. Why? Because it in itself is a hurtful word. To who? Him? He's a retard. What do I care?
I got in a huge family fight over that word. It was like the last major.
And you
blow-up.
probably were arguing with women.
I was.
Yes. And my daughter, my poor daughter, Michael, who's wonderful, who's very sympathetic and just a wonderful girl. Boy, I get in big trouble with her all the time. Anyway, go on. Just the wokeness. Don't say that.
So what the wokeness is, I think what she's about to start arguing, which I would agree is a great hypothesis. It's an imbalance. It's when she says epiphenomenon. Epi means, what is it? Out of?
You got me.
I think epi means out of. So it's a phenomenon that comes out of, like it's
What's an epi?
spawned.
Okay.
That's from epinephrine, which is a different word. Epinephrine is the
Didn't know
drug
that
in an EpiPen.
I thought the same thing
I
as
know. We
you,
have no
Mike.
idea what this guy's talking about. Forget saying it. Say it in English.
Yeah, so epiphenomenon means it's just like springs up out of. So everything that you saw in the woke culture didn't come from nowhere. It, as you said, Genesis, it sprouted up out of the fact that you have an imbalance of too much
That's
empathy,
her theory.
too much safety, too much conformity and cohesion. It's because you're losing all the masculine traits in different spheres of society. So
That's her theory.
that's
Now,
her
there
theory.
may be, you might say, well, no, I don't think that's where wokeness come from. I might say that after I think about it. But I think she's making a very interesting case, and I think it's worth hearing.
Yeah, I'm loving this so far. I just wanted to slow it down for a second.
Yeah.
So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually got enough women that they were able to reorient them. For example, women are consistently less supportive of free speech than men in surveys asking which is more important, protecting free speech or preserving an inclusive society. Approximately 2/3 of men say free speech, and approximately 2/3 of women say inclusive society. In moral reasoning, the traditional way of phrasing the difference between men and women is to say
She
that
went
women
there.
have an ethics of caring and men have an ethics of justice. In making a moral judgment, men will ask, what are the rules and what are the facts? Women tend to be more interested in context and relationships.
If you stop
So
right
let's-
there.
How did
Apply
it
that
make
to
you
wokeness.
feel?
That-
Not what did you do? How did it make you feel?
I am the archetype, me and my wife, when we raise kids. Discipline, justice,
Oh, dude.
compassion.
I am in toddlerdom, and absolutely.
And now my wife trusted me, but she would often have to leave the room. And I wasn't even hurting the child. Like, I didn't beat our children. There was spankings, but
We point to me. Yeah, be my kid. What's up?
well, no, there was spankings, but even them, they were controlled and they weren't in anger. But even the words of no, I will say that to Mike. I have a granddaughter named Lucy, and one time I talked to her like that I remember. Now, I'm not saying I haven't corrected her since then. She's 10, but when she was like a toddler, 1 or 2, she was even smaller than yours. I had this huge puzzle. She was my only grandkid. And you don't want a toddler messing with your puzzle. It's there, for weeks sometimes. And she goes for it. And I said, no. Because I told her no, and she grabbed again. And she got scared, and she got the boo-boo lip. And she was like, well, Papa yelled at me. And then it was like, what a horrible person he is. I had told her no. And by the way, me and Lucy, we're best buds. Trust me, best buds. She's not emotionally scarred at all. But I think my wife thinks all my kids are emotionally scarred. That time you said something harshly, like, they're doing evil. If you don't stop these little evildoers, they're going to run amok on the whole house. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
And she's saying that when it comes to morality, one is for justice Anyway, go on. Now, by the way, if you mess with the brood, it's still emotional. Like if the neighbor kid throws dirt on your kid and nothing happens, and then the wife says to you when you get home, the neighbor kid threw something on our kid. You're like, well, I'll go talk to the father. Father, what, your son? Yeah, well, he did, and then that he shouldn't have done it. And he's like, well, okay, I was checking on. I think we can work this out. We can work this out. The mother is not just. She's emotional. Did you tell him? Tell him what? That his kid is the worst kid ever, and they should probably have a fence around him. No, I didn't think to say that, honey. that you're going to burn down his house and call the police. No, that didn't run through my mind either. I thought, let's make peace here. Anyway, go ahead.
When James Damore wrote his famous, or I should say notorious memo for Google, arguing that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences might not be the result of bias and prejudice, no one even attempted to argue that he was wrong on the facts. The reason that he was fired was because the things he had written might make his female coworkers feel bad. Or consider the Kavanaugh hearings. The masculine position was to say that maybe something bad happened to you, but if you do not have evidence, then we can't allow you to ruin a man's life and career over it. The feminine position was to say, how can you talk about rules of evidence? Can't you see she's crying? Now, to be clear, many women were revolted by the way the Kavanaugh hearings played out. In fact, the very best book on the Kavanaugh hearings was written by two women, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino. But a political system in which men predominate will tend to operate according to rules of facts and objectivity, and one in which women predominate will tend to operate by the rules of emotions and subjective facts.
Pause. She's going to be in so much trouble.
She already is. She wrote a book or something.
Because I saw.
That's how I heard of her. She's
I saw her
hot
face
water.
on a YouTube placard because some people were talking about this. So she's caught the attention. Because as soon as this video popped up, I was like, I saw her face this morning on my YouTube feed.
I should look her up. I think she's a tenered professor somewhere.
Oh, thank goodness she's tenured.
And
they're still going to make her life a living hell.
Or at least she's some sort of scholar. And
at the Edmund Burke. I like it, Edmund Burke.
And so she's got everyone's attention. An American conservative political comment and author.
Did you say?
Oh, she's the editor of the American Conservative, former managing editor of the Washington Examiner.
When she wrote this, though, she knew she was stepping in it.
She knows.
Good for her. This is awesome.
I know. She's kicking butt.
Can you rewind it 10 seconds? A legal system predominated by men will focus on facts and evidence.
And objectivity.
And objectivity. And one predominant by will tend to, she qualified it. She emphasized the tend to.
Well, she even pointed out that two women wrote a book on
Kavanaugh,
which she thought was very fair.
Yeah.
And just.
But it will tend to emotional subjectivity. I forget what she says. You can hit play, sorry.
But a political system in which men predominate will tend to operate according to rules of facts and objectivity, and one in which women predominate will tend to operate by the rules of emotions and subjective facts, even if there are individual men and women who fall on the opposite side of those camps. There's a lot more that could be said about sex differences and wokeness, but I'll skip ahead to the controversial part of my argument.
I like
because
this
believe
lady.
it or not, nothing I've said so far has been particularly controversial. So far, I have only made two claims. One, men and women are different. And two, as institutions become more female, they change in predictable ways according to those differences. I think even most people on the left would agree with that.
She hasn't really made any value
Feminization
statements.
is a great example of what
She wore
Michael Anton
flowers.
calls the celebration
She's hilarious.
parallax, which is a fancy term for anything where you're only allowed to notice something if you think it's a good thing. There are literally thousands of articles out there saying it's great that we have more women judges now because women are more empathetic, or it's good to have more women on corporate boards because that'll make capitalism more humane. It is only when you say women are fundamentally changing the bedrock institutions of our society, and that might be bad, that you start to get into trouble. But I have two actually contentious claims today, and that is the first of them, that feminization is not just an interesting new development that has had some pluses and minuses. It's that feminization, in the case of many important institutions, is a bad thing. In a few cases, it is so bad as to be, to threaten the end of civilization. The rule of law, for example, is a very important thing. It's also very fragile. It requires a deep commitment to objectivity and clear rules, even when those rules yield an outcome that is not nice. I do not want judges who are more interested in context and relationships than in what the law says. Academia is the one part of our society that's supposed to be about finding and transmitting the truth. If it instead becomes about censoring ideas that are dangerous or threatening, then it no longer serves its purpose.
Stop for a minute, please, Sunshine. Academia has already become a place where certain ideas are not allowed because they threaten other people or hurt feelings. And that can be feminization. It could be other things too. I don't know. I'm going to defer to her theory till I know more because she studied it more. But try to publish any scientific study on the origin of homosexuality that doesn't say you're born that way. And you will not get it published. Try to publish anything about the temperature of the earth now and in the future that doesn't say we're in for catastrophe, and you will not get published. You will not get the job at the university. You're not allowed to say certain things because there's other people who believe other things, and we don't want to hurt their feelings, and we don't want to rock the boat. There's a tyranny to this. Anyway, go ahead.
In business, if the only way to advance at your company is to behave in the most HR compliant way possible, that's going to exclude and discourage the very people who are most likely to be leaders and innovators.
Heck yeah, I wouldn't work there.
I happen to think that the most important political issue in America today right now is immigration. And that is a perfect example of a political issue where the elite consensus is highly feminized. We have all of these laws on the books about citizenship and borders, but we're not allowed to enforce any of them if it might make somebody sad. So rule of law, pursuit of truth, borders, innovation. Without these things, I am not being hyperbolic when I say that a thoroughly feminized civilization will set itself on the road to collapse. So that is the first claim, that feminization is in many cases a bad and a threatening thing. The second claim proceeds from a question, and it's a very important question. Can we have demographic feminization in the literal sense without having substantive feminization of the kind that I believe is so dangerous? That is, can we have more female lawyers and judges and academics without having, or while still maintaining the old standards? Because in theory, of course, you can imagine such a thing. There certainly are enough women, there certainly are many women who have the talent and the inclination to meet the old standards. There are many women who are excellent judges. I know many female journalists who are just as hard-nosed and uncompromising as any of their male peers. There definitely are such women, but I am not sure that there are enough of them. Because the question is not, can some women be excellent professors? The question is it possible to have an academia that is majority female and is still as committed to, and still respects the unhindered pursuit of unpopular truths as much as the old predominantly male academia did? I believe the answer is no. I believe demographic feminization does inevitably lead to substantive feminization. It is a difficult thing to confront, but I genuinely believe it to be true. So what does that imply? What should we do about it? I hasten to make clear that I do not propose to ban women from any field or even to discourage them from pursuing their goals as far as their talents and ambitions will take them. I don't think we have to do anything as crazy as that. The only thing that I propose, and I think all that is necessary to solve the problem, is to take our thumb off the scale. Because right now, in ways that many
Amen.
people don't quite appreciate, there is a thumb on the scale in favor of women.
So let's stop for a minute.
The most
I'm loving her.
Yeah.
So she wrote an article. I looked it up.
So glad people like this exist.
Perhaps she came on my radar because she wrote an article that said how women destroyed the West, and it was published in the New York Times.
Yeah, that's what I saw this morning. Was she does a Interesting Times with Ross Douthat that I listen to occasionally.
Ross
Douthat.
So you got the New York Times, for those who don't know, is the leading newspaper in the world, and that's why I hope it falls, because it's full of lies. But it's also left wing. So if they published her article in their opinion section, how women destroyed the West, I don't know if that was her title or theirs. They were looking to villainize her, and they wanted the controversy. Maybe they wanted the sales from conservatives.
That might have been their intention, but it's a double-edged sword. They also got her argument out to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm very very happy to hear. Could you go back? I wanted to comment on the last thing she said. Just I love it. So she's saying a thoroughly feminized, which means majority feminine ideology, is the path to civilizational collapse. And then, I remember what she said. You don't have to back it up. If you did, don't worry. You can play it again. She said, all we got to do is take the thumb off the scale. Now, the thumb off the scale, you know this, but maybe not everyone does. We got to explain to young people. A scale has the old scale today. You stand on it, and it goes round and round, or
it just reads a digital number.
Reads a digital
by
number.
magic. Nobody knows how it works.
The way you knew two things were the same weight is you had a
teeter-totter,
a fulcrum, a teeter-totter that would sit flat with nothing on either side, and then you'd put your one thing here and your other thing there, and you knew they were the exact weight no matter what they were when it sat even. But if you were a salesman and you were selling your wares and you wanted
to charge people more for less stuff,
you'd put your thumb on whatever side was to your advantage when they weren't looking, and it would go, and you you would look away like, hey, look at that. And so putting the thumb on the scale. So she's saying all we have to do, she's saying let men be men.
Quit being preferential treatment
to women, like
to women,
this
or
Mamdani.
feminine characteristics.
He chose an all-female transition team and a female chief of staff. I have no idea why, but if that ain't a thumb on the scale, nothing is a thumb on the scale. I mean, he was doing. You have to do that on purpose.
Well, the only thing I think that's catch-22 about her take the thumb off the scale is competition, hierarchy, objectivity, like recognition of competence is a masculine trait. So taking your thumb off the scale, like take Mamdani example, would be, well, let me just pick the best people regardless of their gender,
but
he's that
femme,
trait,
he can't do it.
that trait in general is a masculine trait.
Well,
saying
right.
I want to focus on competence.
I got you. But I don't think we can do that. But what we can do is take quotas away.
Yes,
trying to say we have to have women in this profession. No, you don't. And we have to have men over here. No, you don't. What do we got to do to get more women doctors? How about nothing? Let's not have scholarships so women can be doctors better than men. Let's not have quotas that saying women, we need at least this many female students, this many female graduates. No, just let them go. Anyway, let her say her part.
Important example, of course, is anti-discrimination law. It is illegal to have too few women employed at your company. If women are statistically underrepresented in your institution, that is a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Pause.
So,
just so you guys out there understand the type of HR burden this puts on, like the church. I'll just tell you, this is what I'm responsible for. But in my old company, it was the same thing.
We have no quotas here. What are you talking about?
Well, so in my old company, was an engineering technology company.
Okay.
The vast majority of the employees were male because all we had was engineering departments and a machine shop. And just predominantly those professions are heavily male. So, it's probably like an 80-20.
And not by discrimination.
And not by
'Cause
discrimination.
women don't want to do them.
And we didn't. So they actually got they got audited by the Department of Labor to say, well, we're going to audit your hiring practices because you're too predominantly.
Department of Labor in Pennsylvania or the country?
I can't remember, but because I wasn't in the HR department. But so that company has to keep records for 7 years of all the people who have applied to any job opening. So how they got out of it is they had to show with actual forms that they had to keep on record that, hey, we've only had this many job openings over the past 7 years, and here is our whole applicant pool, and our current demographics in the company match our applicant pool. It's like we're 80-20 male. It's because we get 80-20 applicants. It's not that we're getting 50-50 applicants and we're only picking the males, right? But they basically had to prove that they weren't discriminating.
When I worked for a drugstore company,
and you could have gotten in big trouble. And so the HR department's got to keep years and years of records.
When I was on the West Coast and worked for Payless drugstores, I worked in store management. Then I worked for HR in training, and there were quotas. They were constantly trying to get females to manage the stores, and the number of cashiers we had that were women was off the charts. I mean, it was 90-10, maybe even 95-5% women at what we could call the most entry-level position. To get women to be assistant managers might be okay. To get them to be managers, it was really hard. To get them to be general managers, it was hard. They forced them into vice president to make sure we had that. And they're like, well, we must be discriminating. But having worked in the stores and in HR, there was no discrimination at all. I saw that if there was a man who was a cashier, this is just how it is. If you're a man and you're a cashier and you're not a retiree, you're a loser, or you're mentally not able to do more. There's no way around it. A man who's content his whole life to be a cashier in a drugstore, in whether he's in his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, or his 50s,
needs discipled.
He's making minimum wage, and even if it's not we paid above the minimum wage in California, but he's making the minimum wage in the whole company. All the men wanted to move up, even if they weren't good enough to move up. But the women, we didn't plan on this. The women didn't. Would you like to become a management trainee? No. Why not? Doesn't fit my lifestyle. My husband has a job. I have a job. This is enough. I have kids. They had I
don't want the responsibility or the extra hours.
They didn't want to be managers.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be the managers, not in the numbers we needed because we were a fast-growing company. And it was the same above that, a district manager. They didn't want the job. I mean, you had one or two ambitious ones, but then even if you have one or two ambitious ones, they'd want to push her through, even if she was a jerk and no one liked her. And there were definitely women who were like, I know why you're here, because it ain't because you're good at your job or you're kind to humans, because you're neither one. And yeah, so that never helps. Anyway, go on. Now I'm just vetching.
Companies and institutions give jobs to women that they would not otherwise have gotten, give women promotions that they would not have otherwise gotten, and in a pinch they create jobs that did not need to exist, involving PowerPoint slides, just to get their numbers up. This is why HR departments exist and why they promote gender diversity so assiduously, not because they're ideologues, although they are, obviously, but because they are protecting their company from lawsuits. Anti-discrimination law also mandates that the culture of every workplace be feminized, because if the atmosphere of your workplace is too brash or competitive or combative, that is also a lawsuit waiting to happen, because it is an indication that your workplace is not sufficiently welcoming to women. That is why HR departments are so zealous about policing every interaction and every communication and making sure none of it has any rough edges. So that's agenda item number 1. Get rid of all the HR ladies. Who's with me? Just fire them.
Get rid of Toby.
And then we'll see how it shakes out. If your company has too few women, that might indicate that you have a problem with your recruiting pipeline. On the other hand, it might not. Either way, we're not going to send a team of lawyers after you to second guess you. It's funny, HR departments are always so careful about making sure the atmosphere at the workplace is welcoming to women. I wonder if they ever considered that maybe their soggy, conflict-averse, nicey-nice atmosphere might not be welcoming to men. The other thumb on the scale, obviously, is the two-income trap. Women pursue careers because they have to for their families to attain a middle-class standard of living. If we address that through various other policies to make it possible for families that want to have one earner to do so, I think the problem of feminization will subside on its own as individuals make different choices.
Okay,
based
we
on
can
what's
stop
best for
right
their
there,
own.
and you can turn her off. Thank you, Sunshine. That last bit is a product of feminism and feminization. People like to talk about the past. When a man could just get a job and he could buy a house and raise a family, that is Pollyannish. It's rose-colored glasses. It's stupid. Men, you couldn't just get a job and then buy a house. Like everyone else, you had to work and struggle, and people had a lot less stuff than we do today. So I'm not going to say that it's so much worse than now, but I will say this. Housing prices and car prices both reflect
Two-income households. Because the people who sell the house, or it's just competition. It's not, well, they're greedy, so they raise the prices. That's not it at all. They might be greedy, they might not be greedy, but if I have two people who want to buy a house from me, and one of them says I'll give you $100,000, the other says I'll give you $125,000, we all would take the $125,000. Well, now all of a sudden, since you have all these couples where two people work, they can offer more for the houses that are available, and so so there is a change. Not necessarily it was so much better then than it is now, but housing prices are definitely out of whack. Because when my dad was working, most moms did stay home, and so it wasn't that they was a fairer, kinder society. If you had a house to sell, no one was offering you the 125. They were like 90,000 or 100. So I'll take the 100. And so you had cheaper houses, and likewise with cars. There's also just some basic economic fundamentals involved too. If back in the day, the society on population-wise of adults is about 50-50, men and women, we'll just say 50-50. If 80% of the women didn't work, right, you had this many people in the workforce. And so employers had to compete for that many people to hire for jobs, right? And then over time, if the vast majority of all men and women adults, like all the women come into the workforce, and it flips from 80-20 to the other way, 80% of the women work and only 20% don't work, you've drastically increased the amount of people that are looking for work. And so that increases competition for job openings. And just a stubborn fact of economics is if you have the same supply but more demand, right, it affects the price.
So what you're
so
saying
we have an
is,
oversupply of work. You have an increase in the supply of
if
workers.
I have 5 guys who could be the manager, and there's 5 positions, I have to pay this much, right?
Right.
Or there's 6, but if there's 10 people,
then
and
I could
5
probably lower the
positions,
wage to get one of them to
lower
take
the wage
it.
because they're hungry. And yeah, so and also you've taken the volunteer force out of our lives by taking moms away from the homes and whatnot. But I do want to say this to end. If you're young and you see all this stuff, and especially if you're a man, I want you to find a wife, marry her, and start having babies when you're poor. If you have a place to live, not try to get out of your parents' basement, but
Try to not be homeless.
yeah, don't be homeless. But if you have a place to live, and you might say it's easy for you to say. Well, actually, it wasn't easy for me to say. We lived in, when I had my first baby, we had a 1-bedroom apartment. Or did we move out right? We moved to the basement, not someone else's parents' basement. Someone had made an apartment in their house in Stormstown, Pennsylvania. And we were in the bottom, and it was just a basement that had been finished. And we lived there. And then when we moved to California, we got an apartment in Camarillo, California in 1990 that cost $810 a month. It was most of my pay.
In 1990, $810
Well,
a
it was
month.
California. So California was crazy.
That's That's like $3,000 a
I
month.
could hardly afford it. My wife had one account in her. She had accounting, but she did not work full time. She had one account, and it was for my uncle, and it brought in a few $100. But for the most part, I had to pay the bills, and that meant we didn't even talk about buying a house. It literally was nothing we ever talked about. And people say, well, I can't buy a house and I get out of college. Cry me a river. I never even had the conversation. Well, other people can. Quit being jealous. We didn't even have the conversation. Instead, I went to my employer and said, look, this is very expensive. This company's big. Could you move me somewhere else? They accommodated me. Otherwise, I don't know what I'd have done, but I was not going. We wanted mom to raise the kid. So they moved me to Arizona, where housing was very cheap in Yuma, Arizona, and we had a great big house, and I could afford it. But now I was stuck in Yuma, Arizona, and trust me, you don't want to be in Yuma, Arizona. But that's where I was, and we were renting a house. Well, then we decided to save some money, so we rented an apartment. It was very small. Then they moved us to another place in California. We rented again. Then they moved us to another place in California. We rented again. Then they moved us to Oregon, and we rented a mobile home. It was a double wide, so that was cool. The first house I ever bought, if you can call it that, was a $10,000, 60-foot long trailer. And I moved myself and 2 kids in it and a cat. We added a third kid, and the cat ran away. So, or we killed it or something. I don't remember. We don't kill cats, but it's gone, all right? That's all that matters. But we ended up with 3 kids, and we knew it was temporary because when you weren't a student in this place, you had to leave. So it was rent too, and I borrowed the money for that. Then I moved into a parsonage, which is not a great idea, but it's all I had in my first job. The first time I bought a house, I was 42 years old, 43 years old. And I didn't care because I was raising my family. You don't have to own a house. You need a place to live. Now, since COVID, I will say rents have gone through the roof. But people think I'm wasting my money renting. You might not be. If you buy a house, say you rent for $1,000, or you get a house with a mortgage of $1,200, and you say, well, look, at least I'm not wasting the money. Well, actually,
For the first 15 years of that 30-year mortgage, you're paying almost zero towards principal.
yes, your principal's not getting paid unless you're paying extra on the principal. And the rest of that's taxes and insurance that's escrowed in there.
And your stuff breaks.
And you get nothing out of that. Then your stuff breaks.
And
Your
your basement foundation starts leaning, and you got to spend $5,000.
So-
and your
right.
roof leaks, and you're like,
Yes,
holy
since
smack, I don't
bought
have
a house,
$15,000.
I realize that I'm now responsible. I've replaced doors. I've replaced windows. I've replaced hot water heaters, several of them. I've replaced 2 air conditioner units. I've replaced the roof. And I have to pay taxes all the time. Whereas when I rented, I didn't have to do any of that. But I got to live in the house. And that's not nothing. What I was paying for was living in the house. When you die, you don't get to keep your stuff anyway. So now I have a house, and I have to dump money in it. Fine, I don't complain. I love having a house. I love owning a house. But it's never ending in its cost. And then you're going to die and leave it. Now, some of you have better jobs. You make more money. Doggone it, God bless you. Get a house that's small enough cheap enough for 1 person. If you have enough money to buy a house on 2, try buying a house on 1. That way, when you have babies, you can take care of them.
Well, that's what I want to reel you back to, because your original point was you can do it. Get married young and have kids, even if you're poor. Being
But you
poor is
got
not
to
an
stop
excuse.
making
Why is that your answer to feminization? Try to bring us back to the video.
Well, what she was saying was one of the solutions is we stop the 2-income necessity. Now, she can't do that. And her solutions are going to be your company pays for daycare, work from home, all these things. You could wait your whole life and die. Instead of that, just raise your family like you should. The man will become very competitive. He'll become very responsible. He'll work long, long hours and not complain because he has to. And it brings out the best in the man. it grows you up to realize she's depending on me, so are they. I've got to get my butt out of bed in the morning, even though I feel like I just slept 5 hours and I don't feel like putting my feet on the floor. You'll do it.
And gosh darn it, I can't be this cashier forever.
Well, you definitely won't stay a cashier. You will definitely want upward mobility. You'll definitely say, what's the management program? And they say there's no place for you. I'll say, I'm going to get another job because it doesn't pay enough. And you'll become, and then you'll be perfect for the job. And then someone will say, yeah, but you're not a woman and it's time to stop oppressing them. And she might get the job over you and you'll see the foolishness of this. Right? Anyway, but having kids is more important than having a house or having money. You just need a place to live. God will take care of it. Heck, this is America, for goodness sake. If it ever gets to the point where you can't afford to live somewhere, then we're all on the breadline. Okay? So, anyway, that's my rant. I don't know what title we're going to give this. Something good like
Feminism destroys the West?
Yeah, feminism equals wokeness. Women are destroying the West. Don't say women are destroying. How women, what it was hers was How Women Destroyed the West. That was the name of her thing. Anyway.
Her other talk is called Toxic Femininity.
She's got a lot of talks and stuff. I've since I found her, which was like 2 weeks ago, I'd never heard of her because I'm not in the academic crowd. I've seen that a lot of people now want to talk to her and put her on podcasts and things.
Yeah, that's how you know you're making a splash.
Yeah, when the world is run by women, men are frightened. My Aunt Susie pointed this out to me many years ago, though she didn't know she was pointing it out to me. When she was talking about why it's hard to overturn an abortion, because she's always thought you shouldn't kill babies in the womb, and it's not from a Christian base. I don't know where she is spiritually, but she was more atheistic. I never heard her define any spiritual things. But she's just a person you can't help but love, and she has a lot of common sense morally, and she didn't think you should kill babies. And she said, and women are mostly concerned, and men won't take a stand. And I said, why? She said, because you don't want an angry itch in your face. And she didn't say itch, but her point was, the last thing you need is a bunch of women yelling at you. And if you think about that, it was like that in college. I learned that if you talk about abortion in front of a female professor, it was not an objective discussion of life or death. She hated you, and she put venom on you, and she'd call you names, sometimes right in class. And men would fear that. And all I'm getting at, I'm not saying women are worse than men or men are better than women. All I'm saying is when women run the show, men are scared at times because they don't. The one thing that makes a halfway decent man, which most men are halfway decent, at least most Christian men, scared is an angry woman. We don't know what to do with it.
You don't know what to do with it. Yeah.
Are you crying? There's no crying in baseball. That is the truest scene I've ever seen about male and female.
I quoted that yesterday, and then I had to explain where it was from to our office staff.
Oh, really? We don't know what to do with you. You're crying. You're angry. Why is she angry? We don't know why our wives are angry. And it frightens us. We're like, I'm running away. Anyway, you got anything else to add? I think we've had a good time. I've had a good time. Have you had a good time, Sunshine, or are you completely bored? You all right? Okay.
I like this one. That was a great video.
I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we do.
Until
next time.
Krieger, or whatever his name was from Parliament.
The British guy.
I like her. Helen Andrews.
Helen Andrews.
Look her up.
She's a
got
fighter.
Stuff.
She's a fighter. She doesn't look.
She's kind of witty too.
She is.
She made some good
She
jokes.
looks just like this wimpy second grade teacher, but she's not that second grade teachers are wimpy. You got to be careful. Women are listening, and their feelings get
a lot of them.
I love my second grade teacher, Mrs. Green.
Mrs. Alero.
Goodbye.
Bye.